Hello and welcome to Navigating to Success Business Journeys Explored. I'm your host, Jeff Carlton, certified focal point business and executive coach. And I'm excited today to have Mindy Pyle. This is the first time I've had an HR professional on, and not often talked about profession, but incredibly critical. Um, for businesses of all size to understand HR. And I'm also a member of SHRM, so I try and stay current. So welcome, Mindy.
Hello. Thanks for
So
having me.
no, I'm super excited. And Mindy is in Casper, Wyoming, which is also exciting for me, having been raised in Wyoming. So, Mindy, tell me about your HR consulting business.
Well, I am the CEO of B&M Solutions, and we are a HR consulting firm for small to mid-sized businesses and nonprofits. And so we do all kinds of HR things for those individuals.
So, when you say small to mid-sized business, eh, do you have I mean, how big is too big?
So typically, you start seeing most businesses, by the time you get to 75 or 100 employees, it's time for you to really have somebody who is HR focused. And under that, often you have the CEO who is drowning in HR, or you have a financial somebody who the CEO has said, I can't drown in this anymore. So you take on HR and they don't have any HR training, or an administrative assistant, something along those lines doing HR for them.
And then they get into trouble, and it costs them 10 times as much as it would to pay an HR. So, for a small to mid-sized business, how many are you kind of on call? Are you kind of like the fire department, or do you have a set number of hours per week that you dedicate to a business? How are you structured?
So I actually I'm pretty flexible with my structuring. So I have kind of three levels of how it works. Um, Basically, you can say, hey, I want 10 hours a month of your time, and you pay for that monthly. You call me. That structure probably works the best because often what happens if I'm just on call, they call me after the fact, and now it's me trying to help mitigate and go back to a system where we're on fire, we're just trying to take care of it, versus, hey, I have 10 hours of her time, I'm going to call her before I terminate this individual and make sure I have all of my pieces in play. And then the other piece is more of an a la carte type thing where they say, I just really need somebody to go through our policies, through our handbook, that kind of stuff. And I do that piece to get things set up for them.
Yeah, and I couldn't emphasize that enough to business owners that are in a growth phase, how important preventative medicine is, having an employee handbook, having feedback mechanisms, um, having intentional, deliberate action as opposed to reactionary uh-oh. Because as soon as you're saying uh-oh, it's too late. And
Yes.
now you're hiring lawyers, and it gets weird. How robust is the HR community in Wyoming, being a fairly low population state?
You'd actually be surprised. Most larger communities have a Society of Human Resource Management um, group of individuals that come together, whether they come together monthly or quarterly.
Do you
Um,
have a
we
state chapter?
we do have a state chapter as well, and we do have a state conference that happens and kind of moves throughout the state. It's actually in Casper this year, so.
Good for
Um,
you.
Yes, yes. So um, there is most larger have Society of Human Resource Managers available.
Yeah, and I'm a member of our local one here in Great Falls, and our state conference was just last month. And it's interesting to see the different size businesses that bring together the HR community and what their experiences are and how valuable it is. Because I'm not in HR, but I work with business owners that have HR. Well, they don't know what they don't know. Uh, and so if you're dealing with a small, say 20-person company, boy, they're really at risk if they don't have that knowledge and that training. So what you do is pretty important. Um, Give me an idea of how big B&N is. How many employees do you have?
So right now we have one, and that's just me.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yes, I started about 10 months ago building the business, and we've not grown to the point that we need to hire anybody else as of yet, but that's coming for sure.
Yeah, oh, and hopefully this helps your growth profile because I couldn't emphasize enough how important this element is to keeping a healthy business and being intentional in managing your teams. Um, so how did you get started in HR? I mean, people don't wake up and graduate high school one day and say, I'm going to be an HR specialist.
So I have kind of a weird journey as far as getting into HR. So years and years and years ago, I worked as just a temp and for a manufacturing plant. And I started as data entry, and their HR manager was looking for an intern in human resources. And she was really happy with the work that I was doing. So she asked if I would be interested in it. I had no idea that HR was even a thing at that point. And and I was actually at that point going to school to go into criminal justice. And honestly, there is an interesting correlation between the stuff that you learn in criminal justice along with the stuff that you learn in human resources.
I was going to say there's some
So
correlation there.
there is. And so I became very interested in HR, and I worked for that company for about 9 years and moved into their HR and safety manager role eventually. And I've kind of just really never looked back from it. I really enjoy the interactions in HR. I enjoy the legal side of HR, and there is a lot of legal pieces that you have to know and understand, and interactions with people. So I've kind of just never looked back from the HR field.
Um, so did you get your national certifications with
I have
SHRM?
not gotten that's on my list for this year. So I went back to school to get my master's degree. So I have an MBA in with an emphasis in HR, and I also have a master's of legal studies. So I focused more on my degree side and moving now into the national certifications.
It's been an interesting topic of conversation in the circles that I'm in of the value of that piece of paper hanging on the wall versus just the continuing education and continuing involvement. And I don't have the answer to the question either, but I ask that because there's a lot of people who are extremely talented that are just like, I don't have a compelling reason to do it because I'm just as effective without a piece of paper in a gilded frame on my wall. So that's an interesting one. There's pros and cons, but
Yes,
people can
I
look into
agree.
it.
I agree completely.
So how long ago did you set out on your own? I think he said it, but I missed it.
About 10 months ago. And really what that was is years and years ago, I worked for the Economic Development Group here in Casper. And one of my jobs was to go around and talk to the businesses and see what their needs were. And of course, Wyoming has somewhere around 85% small businesses. And as I went around and talked with them, I recognized that one of the pieces that is missing for organizations is really human resources. And they're not big enough to have a full-time human resources person on staff. But like I said before, CEOs just drowned in it. They're the person that's dealing with employee conflicts. They're the person often that's trying to do benefits for people. They're trying to recruit people. They're doing all of the pieces of HR. And they're so focused on that because it is a big job that they're not able to do the things that they do best. And so I decided really about 10 months ago, I was going to go out and start working with businesses to give them that 5 to 10 hours a month that they need somebody to just focus on HR. And you get your pool big enough, and now I'm working full time, and I'm doing HR for lots of different companies and helping them grow their businesses in a way that's meaningful for them.
No, that's fantastic, and it's a great um, segue into how important it is to outsource the things that are and the service you offer. You found a true niche market. It's almost a blue ocean. Um, do you find that you have more work, or do you find it than you can do, or is it a semi-competitive field?
Well, in Wyoming, it's really not all that competitive. I tend to have more work than I can handle, depending on the week, of course. And full moons is usually when the weeks are very busy. And so but so I tend to those weeks have a lot and I'm working a lot extra. And then the other weeks it's pretty standard. So
I can't tell you what the science is behind that, but as a former senior leader in the military, and I had leadership positions of all levels over 30 plus years. There is something about the full moon. I don't know what it is, but employees go off the rails sometimes. They just darn it, just be nice to each other, everybody. It's
yes,
not hard.
and
Doesn't cost you anything to just be nice and say please and thank you.
yes.
Um, so what is your growth plan? What does your company look like? Because you're your own CEO, and it looks like you have your employee issues well in hand, being a solopreneur. So what do you look like? What do you look like in 12 to 36 months?
So I'd like to grow the business and really have a couple of people in the next 36 months working for me because it's such an important role for small businesses. I'd like to expand my offerings throughout the state. I've been fairly focused on Casper at the moment, but I'd like to expand that throughout the state. And I can do work in other. I've worked in Montana and worked with them. I've worked in Colorado. So, but at this point, I'd like to just kind of take over the state and see where it takes me.
Yeah, and it's challenging because state laws play into this. It's not state laws play into it huge. So being trying to be an expert in all of those is very difficult. Um, as we're getting close to the end here, tell me what you saw as your biggest challenge in starting your own business as opposed to working under the umbrella of a CEO. You're your own CEO. So what was your biggest challenge in starting your business?
So I think the biggest challenge for me was the fear of the unknown. Really stepping outside my comfort zone. I'd worked for somebody else, worked underneath a CEO for the vast majority of my career, and really stepping from that known piece to an unknown and unsure of I know the business will work, and putting myself out there to really talk to people and discuss what their needs are and that kind of stuff. I never had to do that previously. So as an HR person, you don't really think of yourself much as a salesperson. And really I've had to grow into becoming a salesperson and move into that piece. So I'm really glad that I did, but definitely it was the unknown piece.
Any regrets that you didn't do it sooner?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've known there was a need in our state for a really long time, and I should have definitely looked at it sooner.
That's interesting. So what do you so and it's an important point that anytime you start your own business, it is Zig Ziglar, um, everybody is in sales. Everybody is in sales. They just don't know it until they put the right label on it. Your kid is in sales when they're trying to get an extra cookie before dinner. They're selling you on the idea of how good an idea it is to have an Oreo before dinner, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
you've been doing it since you were five. Everybody, don't be afraid of sales. Um, so last question, what do you think your biggest challenge is going forward? The biggest obstacle you need to overcome to grow and have the 2 to 3 people in your office?
I think it's for me, it's knowing when it's time to make the investment for the next um, employee. I tend to be a bit of a workhorse, so I will work 50 or 60 hours. I did not get into this so that I didn't have a work-life balance. And so I tend to be somebody who doesn't mind working a lot and helping people and taking a phone call on a Sunday afternoon because they've got something going on and all of that stuff. So when's the right time for me to add that next layer to help me keep my work-life balance?
That's the next jump starting your own company is jumping into the deep end of the pool. Um, Hiring that second employee is swimming to the bottom and touching it, right?
Yep,
Uh,
yep.
it's another burst of fear. Well, that about wraps up our time. Um, any final words? Any play? How do we find you?
You can find me on the web at b&msolutions.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under B&M Solutions. So, and we had all my contact information is on those two sites. So, and
Fantastic.
I really appreciate you having me on. This has been fabulous.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And we had a little rescheduling thing, so I greatly appreciate that as well. For everybody watching, thanks. Please heed some of the lessons learned here from other business owners and understand how important HR is. And if you ever have a question, contact your local SHRM chapter or the state chapter of SHRM and get your question answered so that you don't have to call your attorney next. Um, Mindy, thank you very much. And everybody, we'll see you next time on Navigating to Success.